Good morning, classmates. Are you guys ready for this week's edition of TCS Student News?
Neenah, I think they are.
Okay, well let's jump right into our first story. Our first story talks about the UAE Gender Equality Awards. Dubai's Minister of Interior, Sheikh Saif bin Zayed, is being called out for the award ceremony, and at this award ceremony, the awards were handed out to men. As we all know, the Middle East is partially known for their inequality with men and women. For example, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Interior got an award for maternity leave for women who serve in the UAE Armed Forces. And get this, the man handing out the awards, Mohammed bin Rashid, was just on Saudi news because of one of his adult daughters alleged that he had her and her older sister abducted, imprisoned, and tortured for attempting to escape his direct control. When the Dubai media office was attacked with these claims, they responded saying, and quote, "Gender balance has become a pillar in our government institutions." Basically saying that women's equality with men is a priority. But is it really? Should be the real question. I think there should be much more equality, not just in Saudi, but everywhere in the world. Women are capable of much more than people know. And one day, the world just will see what women are capable of.
In our next story, we will be talking about the government shutdown and what will happen during the impasse between the Republicans and the Democrats. The government shutdown ended on Sunday, on the 35-day mark, the longest in history. Trump didn't get what he wanted for the wall, but he decided to open the government back up until February the 15th. If no deal is made by then, the government would once again shut down, or Trump would invoke emergency powers to build the wall. Trump would have to adopt a different approach if he is to get money for his wall from Congress and to revive his damaged presidency. Any deal with the Democrats would require concessions that would force him to risk angering his loyal political base. Democrats who run for the House are not just going to give Trump anything that would be for the border wall without getting something serious in return. They want Trump to offer something on the scale of permanent protection for undocumented immigrants brought in as children, or a path of citizenship for dreamers. Now, Trump did offer a temporary shield to DACA recipients and other migrants covered by temporary protected status for 3 years. But the Democrats didn't want any of this because it offers temporary protection from deportation. They think that temporary protections in return for a permanent wall was hardly a good deal. I agree, this definitely isn't a fair trade. Anyway, what do you think about this, Neenah?
I think that this is dull-witted and unreasonable, Sean.
I couldn't agree more.
In my next story, I would like to talk about a serious topic. For some years now, the clergy sex abuse scandals have been taking headlines. This past weekend, the Pope talked about these scandals that have gone on around churches and around the world. Over 1,600 head church members across the U.S. have been accused of sexual abuse, and over 3,000 minors have came out to the public in the U.S. alone. The Pope addressed this saying that this was a human problem and first resolving it in the church. We should help resolve it in society and in families, where shame leads to cover-up. And this was exactly right. When you take the role as a community leader, people should look up to you. The question should be, that we should be asking ourselves, are we holding these religious figures accountable? And I think that we should.
Next up, we are heading to China, where the United States charged Huawei, a Chinese telecom giant, and their chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou, alleging that the company stole trade secrets, violated trade sanctions against Iran, committed wire fraud, and obstructed justice. Huawei denies that it or its affiliate had committed any of the violations, adding that they are not aware of any wrongdoings of Ms. Meng and believes the U.S. courts will ultimately reach the same conclusion. Beijing fired back on the U.S., calling the charges politically motivated, and urged the United States to stop the unreasonable bashing of Chinese companies. Now, these charges came ahead of high-level trade talks between the U.S. and China and seem certain to ratchet up the tension between the two. Chinese intellectual property theft from U.S. companies has been one of the key issues in the trade war and in Monday's charges, including a 10-count indictment centering around allegations that Huawei stole robotic technology from T-Mobile.
Now let's get into some TCS news. We would like to thank Michael Gamble McCormick for coming in and talking to us last Friday. He talked to us about all the different jobs he had, such as being a mailboy, an overnight child care provider, and as well as helping the disabled. During these times, he told us about some of the experience he faced as well. I can honestly say this was one of my favorites. What do you think, Sean?
I definitely agree. That was definitely one of my favorite conversations that we had in 2019 so far. Now we will be talking about what the government class did on Thursday on their Annapolis trip and what the freshmen did in school while we were there. We went to the Maryland State House and were separated into two groups by Miss Murray for the first part of the trip, where we went to different chambers, the Senate and the House. The delegates They didn't do much. They just held attendance for the Maryland General Assembly. After the General Assembly meeting, the class met with one of our state delegates, Regina T. Boyce, who represents our 43rd Legislative District in Maryland. We had a great conversation with her and learned a lot about what she does as a delegate. Next, we went to the old Senate chamber where George Washington resigned as General of the U.S. Army. We even got to see the original resignation speech that he wrote. This speech was passed down from generations to generations before it was displayed in the State House. While examining the speech, Jordan pointed out Boyd Rutherford, our lieutenant governor, and we had a surprise meeting with him. The talk was short, but we got his email, and Mr. Tom told him that whenever he was free, he should come and visit the school. I think that would be great. After our surprise meeting, we went through a series of underground tunnels into another part of the building. There, the first place we went to was the Joint Committee hearing room. There, we watched a video that further explains what goes on in the State House. Lastly, we visited the Appropriations room, and Miss Mary explained what happens in this room. The Appropriations Committee is responsible for passing appropriation bills along with its Senate counterpart. The trip was both amazing and an educational experience. We learned a lot about how our state government works, and we got to meet a lot of amazing people. Hopefully, we can go and visit there again in the future.
Meanwhile, the freshmen stayed in the school. We had the entire school to ourselves, and it was different not having Mr. Tom there, though Mr. Noah and Brandon were there with us, though. I can honestly say, the building was quiet, and we did miss you guys.
We would like to recognize and congratulate the many people who decided to take time out of their day to make delicious lunches for all of us. On Monday, Miss Amina, Neenah's sponsor, brought in spaghetti for everyone to enjoy. On Tuesday, Miss Peg brought in her beloved sausage, egg, and cheese casserole, salad, and Milano cookies. On Wednesday, Miss Tina, Destiny's sponsor, brought in some delicious chicken salad and tuna salad with cookies and chips. Thank you so much for your generous contributions to the school. We don't know what we would be doing without people like you.
Last but not least, I would like to promote my group, the Pink Panthers. Our group focuses on gender equality, racism, and we would like to stand up for those who don't have a voice and those who need support. So we would like to ask you to join our movement for equality, as a nation and as a people.
Well, that wraps up another great week of news. We want to thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you again in next week's edition of TCS Student News. Bye.
Sean, wait.